Time to ruin some of your favorite childhood movies, more specifically from everyone's favorite company, Disney. After hearing this list, your perspective is bound to change on movies like Pocahontas, Pinocchio, and all sorts of other Disney movies. So without further ado, here are your top 10 terrifying Disney movies that actually happened in real life. I'm your host Andrew, and let's get right into this list. Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have Pocahontas. The Disney movie Pocahontas has been the subject of much controversy due to its portrayal of the historical figure of the same name. While the movie tells the story of a young Native American woman falling in love with a British captain and intervening to stop a conflict between their people, the true story of Pocahontas is quite different. Pocahontas was born in the late 1500s and was the daughter of a Powhatan chief. Her given name was actually Mitaka, and Pocahontas was a nickname that meant spoiled or naughty child. And as a child, Pocahontas would have witnessed the arrival of English settlers in search of the New World, which resulted in numerous clashes between the two groups. One of the most famous events involving Pocahontas was her intervention to save the life of English explorer Captain John Smith. However, it's unlikely that there was any sort of romantic involvement between the two. Pocahontas was later captured by English settlers and eventually married a tobacco planter named John Rolfe, taking the name Rebecca. This was the first recorded marriage between a European man and a Native American woman. And then after 2 years of marriage, John and Rebecca Rolfe traveled to England, where Pocahontas met Captain John Smith once again, but refused to speak to him. And this is where the story kinda takes a dark turn, because sadly, Pocahontas became ill and passed away at the age of 21 while returning back to Virginia from England. There are suspicions of poisoning, but this has never been confirmed. And now it's a movie, and since you heard this origin story, I bet you'll view this movie a bit more differently than the last time you watched it. Coming in at a number 9 spot, we have The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a classic Disney movie that retells Victor Hugo's famous novel. However, what many people don't know is that there was a real-life inspiration for the character of Quasimodo. Henry Simpson, a British sculptor, wrote a memoir about his time repairing the Notre Dame in the 1820s. He describes a man named M. Trahan, who was the lead carver of his crew and who had a hump on his back that was very noticeable. Trahan worked closely with a sculptor who was almost exclusively referred to as the Hunchback by his colleagues. The Hunchback was a government sculptor who mostly kept to himself, but he and Trahan worked in the area of Paris where Victor Hugo lived. Hugo closely monitored the restoration of the Notre Dame and likely knew the Hunchback, if not personally, at least from a distance. Not long after, Hugo published The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1831, and the rest is history. It's definitely a telltale sign the way society mistreats those who are very different from others. Coming in at a number 8 spot, we have Mulan. Mulan is based on a Chinese folklore tale dating back to 420 CE, but the true story is even more fascinating and darker than the family-friendly version. The story follows Hua Mulan, who disguises herself as a man to take her father's place in a fight against Genghis Khan. She is highly skilled in martial arts, sword fighting, and archery, and she manages to go undetected in the army for 12 years until her true identity was revealed. After revealing herself, Mulan befriends another woman named Du Zhang and the emperor's daughter, and the trio continues to fight for their country. However, after the king is overthrown, they are forced to surrender, and Mulan returns home to find her mother remarried. She's ordered to become a concubine for the rest of her life, but she refuses to face such dishonor and takes her own life instead. The true Mulan story is not only a story of bravery and strength, but also a story of sacrifice and really extreme tragedy. Although there is speculation that the actual warrior of Mulan could have been a real woman, the tale has been passed down for centuries and has inspired countless people, including the creators of the beloved Disney movie. At a number 7 spot, we have Pinocchio. Pinocchio, the lovable puppet who has longed to be human, has been a beloved character for generations. But did you know that the story of Pinocchio is actually quite dark? Well, the original tale, written by Carlo Collodi in the late 19th century, is a far cry from the Disney classic we all know and love. In the original story, Pinocchio is constantly punished for his bad behavior in increasingly gruesome ways. In fact, the original ending had Pinocchio being hanged for his misdeeds. But why was the story so dark? It's said that Collodi was inspired by the behavior of the children he saw on the streets of Italy. He wanted to write a cautionary tale that would teach children about the dangers of lying and disobedience. And while the story may have been dark, it certainly resonated with some readers. Pinocchio quickly became a beloved character in Italy and beyond, and when the Disney film was released in 1940, it was a far more sanitized version of the real story. Jiminy Cricket became a prominent character, and Pinocchio's misdeeds were toned down. But even with all the changes, the story still manages to teach some valuable lessons about honesty, bravery, and selfishness. At number 6 spot, we have Rapunzel. While many of us may be familiar with the tale of Rapunzel and her long golden hair, many of you don't know that it's inspired by a real story. Introducing the story of Barbara as recorded by Jacobus de Verogny in the 13th century. It's a harrowing tale of a young woman's rebellion and ultimate persecution. Barbara was a beautiful and headstrong young woman who lived with her wealthy father, Dioscorus. Many suitors sought her hand in marriage, but Dioscorus made it a rule that they could only meet Barbara after an interview with him. One day, after an argument with her father about wanting more independence, Dioscorus locked Barbara up in a tower to prevent her from meeting with suitors behind his back. Barbara's only contact with the outside world was through the townspeople who delivered food to her. One day, someone left her a book explaining Christianity. At the time, Christianity was viewed as a religious cult that the Romans were trying to prevent from taking over. Despite the risk, Barbara read the book and fell in love with Christianity, deciding to convert eventually. Using her beauty and charm, Barbara convinced the nearby workers to send over a doctor who was actually a priest in disguise. In the most significant act of rebellion she could do at the time, Barbara was baptized. However, when Dioscorus returned home, he discovered what his daughter had done and reported her to the authorities. Barbara was dragged by her long hair to the town square, where she was beaten, tortured, and burned by her community. Finally, her father chopped off her own head with a sword. So, if this origin story won't give you a horrific perspective, I don't really know it will. In the hump of our list, we have Jungle Book. Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book has been loved by audiences for years through various film adaptations that capture the essence of the story. A young boy named Mowgli who learns the importance of self-discovery and the harmony between man and nature. However, what many people may not know is that the story of Mowgli was actually inspired by a real-life boy who was discovered by hunters in 1867, living in the jungle, raised by wolves, and completely unaware of human behavior and language. The boy was taken to a nearby orphanage where he was given the name Dina Sankar, which means Saturday in Hindi, the day he was discovered. Being raised by wolves, Dina Sankar mimicked their behavior, walking on all fours and eating raw meat while gnawing on the bones to sharpen his teeth. He had no understanding of human behavior, of language, and instead growled and howled like a wolf in an attempt to communicate. The missionaries at the orphanage attempted to train the boy in a human lifestyle, teaching him to walk on 2 feet and speak in a human language. However, he never fully acclimated to human behavior and language and never learned to speak it himself. Instead, he learned to understand language in his own way and eventually wore clothes, walked like a human, and even smoked cigarettes at one point. Number 4, Dumbo. Dumbo, the beloved Disney movie that has captured the hearts of literal millions, and it's based on a real-life elephant named Jumbo who lived in the 1800s. However, it's a pretty dark story. Jumbo was captured by hunters and separated from his mother, who was tragically slaughtered for her tusk. He was then transported to the London Zoo, where he was put on display for the public to look at. Jumbo became increasingly aggressive as time went by, which led him to being sold to the P.T. Barnum's traveling circus in the United States. During Jumbo's time in the circus, he was routinely given whiskey to calm him down. He was often found sedated and would even consume champagne and whiskey-soaked biscuits. Jumbo's health began to deteriorate rapidly, and he was used as an attraction for visitors to ride, which caused his joints to wear out faster than normal. Jumbo passed away young after being hit by a freight train, likely due to his deteriorating health. Even after his death, he was put on display for 4 years in a New York City's gala and paraded around as a roadside attraction. And this sad story of Jumbo definitely sheds light on the dark side of the circus industry and the cruel treatments of animals during this time. Number 3, Beauty and the Beast. The story of Pedro Gonzalez, also known as Petrus Gonzalez, is a fascinating and heartbreaking one that takes us back to the 16th century. Born with a rare condition called Ambra syndrome, which causes excessive hair growth all over the body, Pedro was shunned and outlawed by his community as a freak. At the age of 10, he was kidnapped by the local ambassador and gifted to King Henry II as a slave. In the court of King Henry II, owning exotic and outlandish people was a point of pride and elevated one's status among high society. Pedro was treated like an animal, trapped in a cage, and fed raw meat to survive. He didn't speak well, and he had been abandoned in his early years, and basically he was essentially treated like a pet. His name was changed to Petrus Gonzalez by the king, who believed that his original Spanish name sounded too foreign. Petrus lived like this for years until the queen decided to experiment with her late husband's gift. She arranged a marriage between Petrus and a local servant girl named Catherine, allegedly chosen for her distinct beauty but without any knowledge of the queen's true motives. So on their wedding day, Catherine was shocked to see her groom covered head to toe in hair and was forced to marry him. So yeah, think about that next time you watch this movie. Pretty dark. Number 2, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a classic fairy tale that has been enjoyed by children and adults alike since its release in 1937. The story follows the beautiful Snow White, who lives with her jealous stepmother, the evil queen. The queen orders a huntsman, but he can't go through with it and instead sets her free in the forest. This is where she befriends 7 kind-hearted dwarfs. Evil queen discovers that Snow White is still alive and tricks her into eating a poison apple, which puts her into a deep sleep. A prince finds her and wakes her up with a kiss, and they live happily ever after. However, the original story by the brothers Grimm has a much darker ending. In the original tale, when Snow White is poisoned by the apple, the prince doesn't wake her with a kiss. Instead, he stumbles and drops her, dislodging the poison apple from her throat, which brings her back to life. The story then takes a more gruesome turn as they plan a wedding for Snow White and invite all the kings and queens in the land, including the evil queen. She is punished by being forced to wear a pair of glowing red hot shoes. This ending was removed from the Disney film, obviously, as it was considered too disturbing for children. The fact that the original Snow White story is much darker than the Disney adaptation shows how much the tale has been sanitized over the years. Number 1, Hercules. Even though this isn't technically real life, it's a part of Greek mythology, so it's gotta count for something. Plus, the true story is much darker than the one portrayed by Disney in their animated movie. In the movie, Hercules is a half-human, half-god who falls in love with Megara, a sarcastic and lovable character who is enslaved by Hades. Hercules eventually frees her and they live happily ever after. However, in the original myth, Megara is the daughter of King Creon and Princess of Thebes, and the two don't actually fall in love. Instead, Megara is given to Hercules as a gift after he saved Phobos single-handedly from the minions. Over time, Megara bears him several sons, but things take a dark turn when Hera sends Hercules into an unstoppable madness. Hera deeply hated Hercules because he was a reminder of all the affairs committed by her son, who is also her brother Zeus. Hercules had some pretty bad mommy issues about this, even though she was not even the mother. And riddled with guilt, he enslaves himself to his cousin Eurystheus and performs the 12 labors in an attempt to atone for his sins. It's interesting to see how much the Disney movie changed the original myth, but it just makes sense. Well, these are the top 10 terrifying Disney movies that actually happened in real life. What do you guys think about this list? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and don't forget to leave some suggestions for some future videos. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you never miss a future video again. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you guys have a scary day.